Here's a look at what's in front of us now. Getting ready to put the soundboard back in this piano from whence it came. Where to start? This side of the soundboard is fitting in fine. Mason Hamlin has provided me with all these locator pins. They put these screws in all around the soundboard, so I know if this is hitting the right spot, that this part of the soundboard is in the right place. What happened here is when I was jointing this joint to put this piece of the soundboard back, glue this back on, I planed a little more off than I should have, but I did it with the knowledge that if it didn't fit perfectly, like it doesn't, that this piece of wood under here called the belly rail, that's like 1.5 inches for a piece of wood. If this misses like it did by, whatever this is, 1/16 of an inch, maybe down, a little more down here, that this will be glued on solidly without any worries. So this has to be in the right spot. The original, this didn't change, so the bridge and everything, the working bits of this are all going to be in the right spot. This is going to be a little bit of a job for some wood filler. And I have some other jobs for wood filler around here, obviously, too. It's not all going back. This has to be tight to the case, or there's no sense in having what Mason and Hamlin calls that tension resonator, and they're holding the case in there if you leave a gap in here. So I could do what the old timers did and glue a shim of wood on there, or I can use, I can cheat, which isn't really cheating, and use a product like this because it's not really cheating. It fills gaps nicely without shrinking. It does the job of, the idea is this soundboard is going to be expanding and contracting, and you don't want a floppy edge here allowing it to expand out and collapse down. That's very rough, and that's why I'm not making these videos public right now, because it's a little controversial. I mean, some piano manufacturers don't even bother fitting their soundboards. They're all floating in there, and they sound okay. So, but the concept here is to integrate the case and integrate the soundboard so that it doesn't what? I'm not even going to volunteer any information more about that other than I'm going to fit this in there and make sure this gap is filled. Here's our pin block, which is, both of these things are rough fit. What I'm going to do next is hoist the plate, put the plate back in here, and I have accurate markings on the plate that tell me where the plate was. And now there's a little bit of give. There's a 0.5 millimeter give in here, you can tell. So I'll fit this right and left, frontwards and backwards. I have some rough markings in here now. You can see on the case, this is what I do to mark it roughly. So it still has to come back and get fit perfectly to the stretcher. It has to come back this way. And then the right and left will be worked out later, and glue a shim of wood on one side or the other. And I'll just check, where's my damper guide rail? It's over there. So I'll put the damper guide rail back in here, run a string across it, and just make sure that when the damper guide rail's in the right place, the string goes across it, and I'm not going to have to move the dampers. I mean, if we're talking 0.5 millimeter and you had to move the top of this 0.5 millimeter, you would not have to jump through hoops of moving the bottom tray and you won't have to re-regulate it. It's, there's a little bit of leeway you can get away with there. Not much, but I don't think we're going to need much. This is going to fall right back into its position. What else was I going to show? I'm going to go through these things that I've had for years. And now I have time to do a little work on this kind of stuff. And these are convenient. I mean, you don't need these anymore, really. This is a holdover from the days when I started working on pianos and we used hide glue. We actually used hide glue to glue these things in, and you had to move fast, and you had to throw these cauls in here quick. You had to throw clamps onto here really quickly, otherwise the hide glue would gel and you'd get in trouble. Now we have more open time, but these are still nice to have, and they do a very good job of really putting the pressure right where you want it, so that when I get underneath there and I check the rest, there isn't gonna, you can't have even the hint of a gap. It has to fit perfectly. The soundboard has to fit perfectly to the rest, and that can't come loose, you know, period. So, whereas those are not that important, they're nice to have. It's nice to have the right equipment to do this stuff. So I have not started with finishing the plate yet. I haven't figured out a way to nicely really repair this zone here that I don't like. I've got to remove a little of the metal on this plate. You didn't hear that from me. I didn't do it. Somebody else did it. Okay. Oh well, I don't know if I talk a little about the finish. It didn't go 100%. It went very well in spots. Smaller spots like this are okay. There's a little what you call orange peel, if you can see that. I realized after the last video, I know I have to dust off this lens, and I didn't do it. But this is close enough that I'm going to be able to start sanding with maybe somewhere between 320 and 400. This is varnish, it's not lacquer, so it's a little softer and easier to sand than lacquer, which is nice. I am going to leave these parts out here hanging. I'm going to leave them hanging for a while and just ignore them, which I'm good at. A lot of these things are... It was really nice to spray this varnish in places like this. I don't know if you can see it, but it really flowed out nice. It actually flowed out okay on this part of the lid. I can't get it to focus, but this part of the lid was troublesome in that I couldn't get a nice wet coat on here. So what I'm going to do is take this down and then sand this down again flat, and then really spray it when it's horizontal. And that way I'll be able to pour some more on it and get it to run out. Or else just take the time with the very fine spray to put on, 14, 15 more coats with a very fine spray. I'll fix this one way or another. It's not terrible. I mean, I could 220 this down flat and then try to buff it up, but that would be more work than maybe trying to get a nice wet coat on there and get it to flow out better. So that's where we are right now.